Hello, how are we all? I'm just going to pop the comments up on stage and do them in the orientation that we like them. It's nice and big and a bit tall. Hello, friends. Well, I can see the chat coming in that everybody is experiencing, lots of people are experiencing the same issues that I currently am. So if you can hear whirring, that is because I have two fans upon me. We aren't doing this from the kitchen, so hopefully we don't wake the children up because they're just next door. This is the room that I can get the coolest, and I also don't want to have all the lights on where the dog is resting because I feel that's deeply unfair. It is very hot. We've had the paddling pool out this afternoon. The children have been in the paddling pool. It's intense. So it's time for the history news from May. It feels like this should be July or August, this kind of heat, but here we are. It's May, and the weather is what it is. Now then, today's background photo, I haven't got my green screen up. It's a little bit, when I move my head, it's a bit worry. You can sort of see my shelves behind me, but you can still see this beautiful picture, I think. Now, do we know what I'm sat in front of? This image is brought to us by Rebecca. And while you have a discussion about that, let's just say some hellos. Hello, Steve. I also saw your image, so I'm keeping that in the background for next time. Maester Tory. Yes, indeed. As I said, it's Escorcio here. And hi, Julesy. Happy Memorial Day. Hope you're having a great time. And Lizzie, hello. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Clue. Thank you for coming down. Hello, Pistol Annie. Thank you so much. Marianne Rosie, it's not as warm in Scotland. Well, it's warm in London. It's warm. It's very warm in London. Carol, not too hot during the day, but trying to get to sleep when it's above. The houses definitely heat up over the day. This is the issue. On the other hand, this is of course also my favorite time of the year because it's the time of the year on social media where people from canonically hot countries or hot locations who are staying in London for a bit, they freak out over the heat. And it is my favorite time of the year because obviously we are, as Brits, very aware that like Australia, very hot place, Texas, very hot place. So, and there are other states and locations are available. But for example, when we see an Australian or we see a Texan on the streets of London being like, why is it like this? I don't know. I don't know why it's like Satan's bumhole, but it is. I don't know. Well, I do know. It's because we build our houses to insulate to keep it warm because we only have about 3 days of sun a year. And on all of them, it wants to murder us. So that's what's happening. Good afternoon, Ticky. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Snudpuckle and Jessie. Hello. Kurokumo, hello. Thank you so much for joining. Snudpuckle's just turned on their AC. Well, you see, unless you're living in a hotel in the UK, most houses aren't fitted with AC here as standard. Certainly ours doesn't have AC. And when we still had our chinchilla, because like chinchillas are great, but also they're very fragile. And because they can't sweat properly or at all, they overheat really quickly. So we were like, can we keep the room cool enough or do we need to buy a £1,000 air conditioning unit for this chinchilla? And we were considering it. We were because the hotter it got, it was unbelievable. Emery's in Whitehall and very boiled. Yeah, I can imagine you would be. The closer you get to the sort of city centre where there's, we've got parks near us. We've got the less trees you have in a place, the hotter it gets. Rhombohedral has got the same heat wave in Rotterdam. Shane, yes, it's a great background pick. I'm wondering if anyone's going to guess where we are. Let's hop down. Let's see. Jennifer, surviving, yes, alive. I'm off to Swanage. Well, I'm off to Dorset tomorrow because the day on Wednesday I am filming with my lovely pal to do the history of Punch and Judy. So do look out for that video. When I made the video about Jack Ketch, I got a lot of questions and queries about Punch and Judy. I remembered in the recesses of my brain that I have a friend who is a Punch and Judy man. So I'm going to film with him because he's very up on the history and he'll be able to tell all sorts of things. So I will be down by the beach. So hopefully that will cool things down. Has anybody guessed where we are? I'm seeing if anyone's... Have we got it? Jennifer says, got a rare few weeks where you can teach your 16 to 18-year-old students anything. They voted on a few topics, and one was a rare story from British history. Oh, that's very interesting. So I like the Matchwomen. I think that's a great story from British history. I think that that kind of the connections to it being the first successful Labour action in London, the fact that these women were connected to dockers, mostly because they were family of dockers, and the dockers kind of get the credit for being trade unionists, and a reminder that unions are there not just for pay, but also for conditions, for health and safety. I think it's really important as a reminder. And lots of these ladies, they're based in the East End. They would be connected to, in some cases, they were the women that go on to become the East London Federation of Suffragettes. So these kinds of networks of conversation, I think, are really interesting and important. So that's one thing that I think is a brilliant idea to teach. I've made a video on that as well. I think there's some really cool stuff. Obviously, I think William the Conqueror's coronation, when his soldiers set fire to the surrounding buildings because they mistake cheers of acclaim for an assault, and so they act accordingly, with apparently the Norman response to any sort of aggression being arson. What else? See if my husband may have some ideas as well. I don't know if we're allowed to tell that one. So yes, my husband suggested that there's a rare British history story if you look into Colonel Mark Gray and the Croatian Dam. I'm not sure how much I can say on that. So whatever's publicly available, look into that. Because it's possible that I know things I shouldn't necessarily know. So I'm not going to tell any more of that story, but whatever's publicly available is worth looking into. I think that's a great story as well. What else is there? Those are some good ideas, I think. Oh, also the theft of the crown jewels. Like if you've got 16 to 18-year-olds, the theft of the crown jewels by Colonel Thomas Blood, if that is his real name, that's always a crowd pleaser. That's a heavy hitter, the theft of the crown jewels. So those are a few suggestions. Julesy from earlier, I know. Get the image, imagine what the devil's bunghole out of my head. It's when it's so hot, you're like, it's like Satan's crack. Steve points out it's worse if it's next to a hot PC. Yeah. I mean, I'm on a laptop, but it's very warm. Very warm. There are a bunch of trees. I don't believe it's being used as a cemetery. I don't believe. Has anybody? Hello, everybody. I'm seeing if we've. I don't know. Deb's backing me up. The crown jewels theft and the match lady, the two of the faves, they're great. And particularly, I think if they haven't done the theft of the crown jewels by Thomas Blood, I think the ending where they can perhaps do some small group work and think about what the possible suggestions might be as to what the conversation between Charles II and Colonel Blood is that means that he not only walks away a free man, obviously in the crown jewels, but also that he gets rewarded. And also, on top of that, the fact that when he dies, they call upon him to be exhumed so they can check he's actually dead and hasn't faked his death. And apparently, the way they know it's him is because he has large thumbs or thumb. Brilliant story, I think. Brilliant story. It's not the UK Snudpuckle. It's not. It is very far. It is quite literally the other side of the world from us. So, as nobody's guessed yet, I'm going to tell you. So, this is from Rebecca, and this is the old government house. If I pronounce this wrong, I apologise. Parramatta, Sydney, and it dates back, she tells me, to 1799. What? And it's, let me get out of the way. Oh, graceful as ever. There we go. I think that's cool. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sending it. So what we're going to hop on into is we're going to start off with the thanks, as always, because we do have a lot of people to thank for sending in their recommendations for news items. Also, for all of you who are joining, welcome. If you're watching this on the playback, thank you as well. We have got, of course, updates, repatriation / decolonisation news. We've got lots of new news. We've got a fair few ding-dongs. In fact, one does involve a ding-dong. You probably know what we're talking about. We've got events and exhibitions, one of which is a shameless plug, shameless self-promotion. Sorry, not sorry. As always, the articles will be listed and numbered in the description box beneath this video, however you're watching it, whether you're watching horizontally or vertically. And the numbers that you will see will correspond to the slides that are about to be on screen. Thank you to everyone who has sent me articles. I have seen articles coming in today, which have not made it into this slideshow, but if we haven't covered it already, then they'll make it in for next week. So without further ado, let's hop in to the thank yous and go from there. So first and foremost, I need to thank Jenna, Elverta, Yvonne, Steve, the long-suffering Mr. Dr. Cat. I need to thank Joseph, Snudpuckle. Sorry, the S has been absorbed by my picture. Sarah, Rebecca. Thank you to Jessie, Shane, Sheri, Kathryn, Sally, Katie, Beth. I believe that's Maia. That's how the girl at my school pronounced it. So I'm going to go with Maia. If I have got that wrong, I apologise. And Carol. So we only have the one update. I don't know why I'm saying Juan like that, but I shall continue on. Oh, Carol's got another one. Apologies. The guy who escaped from the Tower of London dressed as his wife's lady's maid. That is the Lord Nithsdale escape. Also a cracker. An absolute cracker. So let us begin with our first update. And this isn't actually this is an update that connects back to the video I made going to the exhibition at the Museum of London Docklands on mudlarking, because this is about mudlarking fines. And one of some of these were in fact displayed in the exhibition. I think I showed them on camera. We're talking about dove's type. So I'm sure we're all very aware that mudlarks go down to the banks of the River Thames. And we've talked about this before. I'm not sure if they're mudlarks everywhere else, but certainly they're most famously on the banks of the River Thames. And they have to be licensed, and anything they find that could potentially be treasure, they have to usually speak, depending on what bit of the beach they're on, they have to speak to various individuals who are connected to it, and it's decided whether or not it's treasure. Often the people they speak to will be the London Museum. So here we have got Jason Sandy, lots of which are some of his finds have been in the London Museum, the V&A, and the Natural History Museum. So in 1900, a printer and bookbinder by the name of T.J. Cobden Sanderson created something called dove's type. And it's been described by many as the best examples of font design of the arts and crafts movement. He sets up the Dove's printing press with his business partner, the printer and engraver, Sir Emery Walker. They made hand-printed books, hand-pressed books, which were thought to be incredibly fine at the time. But the pair fell out spectacularly. And so they start in 1900. By 1999, 1909, they've properly fallen out. Cobbs and Sanderson saying that Walker is not as committed as he should be to the art. There was a compromise that Walker was going to get the type when Cobbs and Sanderson died, Cobbs and Sanderson being older. This idea was thought to be abominable by the creator of the type, who instead came up with a secret plan to stop anyone getting hold of the type at all by taking every single piece of this metal type and chucking it off Hammersmith Bridge into the River Thames in the middle of the night. This would have been, they think, about a ton of metal being chucked into the river, some 500,000 pieces of type, the individual letters and punctuation marks and umlauts and whatever else it might be. Allegedly, he made about 170 trips between 1916 and 1917 to achieve this abomination. He then wrote an article in the local newspaper declaring that he had, quote, bequeathed the type to the river. And that is how the business partner who he'd fallen out with found out that Dove's type no longer existed. The gentleman we're seeing here on the foreshore has been mudlarking for 14 years. So he lives near to Hammersmith, so quite close to Hammersmith Bridge. In 2018, he announced that he'd found hundreds of pieces of Dove's type. But he was told that it might not be. Someone got in touch with him and said it might not be what you think it is. So they went through it, and on that occasion, he was told that he hadn't found a single piece of Dove's type. And he then determined that he'd been searching on the wrong side of the river. So then figuring this out, he goes down and he points out they've recently removed the wonderfully named Wet Wipe Island. You can guess what might have been there. So the tide went much lower, and then they could collect more things, including 41 pieces of Dove's type. And so he has this collection of Dove's type. I don't think he has all of the letters, but I think other people do. So they have been managed to reconstruct it, which must be incredibly frustrating for the memory of the man who thought he'd bequeathed the river, that they've managed to get it all out. And some of this was on display at the exhibition, and it's a really beautiful font, and it's lovely that it has survived. So Snudpuckle asks, is it shoe sucking mud? Well, I've been on the foreshore. I've been out with a mudlark, and it certainly wasn't shoe sucking mud when I went there. It's kind of sandy, rocky, it's like a pebble beach in various places. There's a lot of sort of sand, silt foreshore. The river is cleaner than it's been in generations. I mean, 2021 down in the East End, because we do live in East London, they had a Lido at Royal Docks, and I put my husband and my 1-year-old at the time eldest son into that Lido, so they were swimming in Thames River in 2021. So I felt safe enough to let my baby, be dunked in Thames River in 2021. They still have a Lido. I'm not sure if it's still as clean as it was in 2021, because the one thing about the pandemic is a lot of things did get cleaned up, but the foreshore is certainly a much safer and cleaner place. Also, if you're down by some of the old pubs, so I'm thinking of like the Prospect of Whitby at Wapping, you can get down to the river really easily. Like the pub overlooks it. And my husband did his stag do, and he and his mates went down to Prospect of Whitby, and he called me from the foreshore. And I was like, are you by the river? Because I could hear the lapping. And I went, are you by the river? And he was like, yes. I went, are you alone? He was like, yes. I'm like, don't be. You need to you're wearing a Superman cape. You need to go inside and find a responsible grown-up. He's like, there are none. I'm like, I'm aware. I know your friends. But he came home and he was put in the recovery position by one of our friends. And then I came home and I found him okay, but with a bruise from elbow to wrist. And so I quizzed our friend on this. I went, what happened? He went, he just, in the middle of the Prospect of Whitby, they got these flagstones down. In the middle of the Prospect of Whitby, he just gave up standing, like mid-conversation. Like Trigger. It only falls, no, Del Boy only falls on horses, just went down. But he was fine and nothing got shaved off or tattooed on, which was all I asked for. Make sure he comes back with no, it either has to be able to grow back in time for the wedding and nothing, no facial tattoos. Kid Debbie, what's the point of it? So these would have been my granddad, my great granddad's brother used to work in the print with my great granddad. So this is what you set this type. If you're going to print a book or a newspaper, you put each individual letter in the block, you rub it with ink, and then you press it. This is the old way of printing. And I used to do this for newspapers because my great uncle, my granddad's brother, his first day, I say he worked in the print for one day because there was a tray of fully set type for what was going to go out, and he dropped it. And he lost his job. That's a sackable offence. Like you don't get to come back to work after that. Can you imagine? They take ages to set together. Ages. Oh dear, oh dear. But yes, so a mudlarking update. Now then, we're going to hop into our repatriations news now. So first up, I got sent this lots and lots and lots, and I understand why. A portrait looted by the Nazis has been found in the home of a Dutch SS leader's descendants. This was stolen from a Jewish art collector in the Netherlands during World War II. It's called Portrait of a Young Girl by the Dutch artist Toon Kelder. And it's believed to have hung for decades in the home of Heinrich Seffart's family. The painting belonged to Jacques Goudsticker. He died fleeing the Nazi invasion in the Netherlands and left behind a collection of some 1,000 paintings. The person who ended up with it was a Dutch general who commanded a Waffen SS unit of volunteers on the Eastern Front before he was assassinated by resistance fighters in 1943. The man who found out he had been more recently, one of his descendants found out that he was related to this Nazi collaborator, and he then went to his grandmother to ask about this painting's history. She's supposed to have told him, quote, that it was Jewish art stolen from Goldsticker. It's unsellable. Don't tell anyone. The family changed their name at the end of the war, and they claim they were in possession of the painting but did not know its true origin. Seems like Nana did, though, doesn't it? So it's thought that the painting was plundered by Hermann Goering, and then it was then from there sold to Seffart at auction before being handed down to his descendants. An investigation was launched. The lawyers of Goldsticker's heirs were contacted. They confirmed that the collector had previously owned 6 paintings by Toon Kelder, and it was confirmed that these paintings had been included in a 1940 auction where Brand believes the portrait of the young girl had been sold. So these paintings could have been sold for anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands of pounds. But of course, the sale of looted art is illegal in most countries, as the works are seen as being sold as under duress. This is the quote: for decades, the family, who of course bear no personal guilt for Sefard's own crimes, had the opportunity to do the right thing and return this painting. They chose not to. It was then later said to BBC, without explaining further, that apparently the painting has been handed over. So hopefully it's going to make its way back to the descendants. But yes, so this has been located. And yes, we are still very much dealing with Nazi fallout. And well, Nana absolutely knew. She clearly knew. She said she named the person whose collection it came from. She said, "Don't tell anybody. You can't sell it." Is essentially what was said. I'm seeing a lot of comments about ads. Is it more than last time? Because I did sort of set it to be conservative, as in not too many. So, of course, what I permit to be added in, I don't necessarily think I have any. I have no say in it over the live. I did not know that there was going to be lots of ads again. I thought it was better last week. Apologies. Hopefully it will calm down in a second. This is, I believe, an update as well as repatriation. So I put it in here. Hundreds of antiquities valued at $14 million have been returned to India by New York authorities, including some that were connected to the alleged art smuggler Subhash Kapoor. That name has come up a lot in our conversations of repatriations, etc. This is a return of 657 antiquities announced by your friend of mine, ding, 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 the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg Jr. This comes hot on the heels of New York City's Mayor Zohran Mamdani talking about the necessity of returning the Koh-i-Noor diamond. They brought up the fact that Mamdani is the city's first democratic socialist mayor, and he has suggested to reporters that Britain should return the gem. It's currently set into the Queen Mother's crown and is held in the Tower of London. He suggested to be returned to India hours before shaking hands with King Charles on Wednesday at the 9/11 memorial. I think connecting those two things is a choice. Is that some sort of like he's being disloyal to Charles? It's not his king, okay? It's odd. This is a really weird framing of this article. It's supposed to be about New York officials returning more than 650 antiquities, and then making it about Mamdani highlighting the issue around the Koh-i-Noor. It's very interesting framing. Very interesting framing. So anyway, it goes back to Bragg and talking about the scale of trafficking networks that targeted the cultural heritage in India is massive, as demonstrated by the return of more than 600 pieces today. There's unfortunately more work to be done to return stolen artifacts back to India, and I thank our team for their persistent efforts. Included is a bronze figure of a Buddhist deity that's seated on an inscribed double lotus base over a lion-flanked throne. And it was stolen and smuggled to the US in 1982, ending up in a private collection by 2014. There's also a red sandstone figure of a Buddha standing with his right hand raised in a gesture of protection. That was looted from northern India and smuggled into the US by Kapoor. He's currently under indictment on smuggling charges. That man, I'm pretty sure that bloke's been under indictment since I started doing the history news. I mean, we've got to be getting close to the better part of 5 or 6 years now that he's been indicted. How long do you know what? That's a different question. Here we go. I'm going to say this. I don't know why this is being added into the article. I don't know why this is the framing that they're doing, but I'm going to carry on. Mamdani's remark opens a can of worms over a gem that has at times been in possession of the Mughal and Persian empires, as well as many others. Britain acquired the stone, that's an interesting way of framing it too, in 1849, and it's now a powerful symbol in the debate over colonial history. True. India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan have all claimed ownership. A spokesperson for the mayor, who was born in Uganda to parents of Indian origin, told the New York Times that the mayor, quote, is generally opposed to the idea of a king. Fair enough. He's American. Mamdani's administration has described New York's history as, quote, one of colonization, exploitation, and racial oppression. William Dalrymple, who's the co-author of the 2017 book, The Koh-i-Noor, The History of the World's Most Infamous Diamonds, told the New York Times that diamond, quote, has had a long history of bringing bad luck, and again seems to have been the tripwire which tripped up King Charles on his trip to New York. This is really weird framing to me. Like, I don't, if it was brought up, there was no evidence to me that it caused a ruckus or a row. It seems to me like a positive story about repatriation is being used to frame as if Mamdani is not doing diplomacy well. I don't know what's happening. And also it's not really like, while he is the mayor of New York, I understand that. The work that was being done by the DA's office, by Alvin Bragg at the DA's office, long predates Mamdani. It's just really peculiar framing. Miss Amy, what publication did it come from? I believe it came from The Guardian, the UK Guardian. It's just it's so weird that this many paragraphs in an article that I think stands alone and is interesting on its own. It's just really weird. They've been like, then Mamdani's done this. I'm like, that's really strange. That's like me going, so I was having a full English breakfast in a lovely B&B. It was delightful. But then my pedicurist was talking about this. Your pedicurist wasn't there at this time. What are we doing here? What are we doing? And also, being anti-monarchy isn't for the mayor of New York. Like, isn't that kind of the job description? No. Am I missing something? This is really weird to me. Really weird. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, people so Steve's pointing that the Guardian can be a bit weird in its sources. Yes. Miss Amy points out that it's the Guardian is traditionally a left-wing newspaper. This does seem like it feels like it's sort of leaning more right in this take, but I can't even understand what it's saying or why. I just don't know. It's a bit baffling to me. But anyway, the repatriation's happened, and that's worth celebrating, even if the reporting is bizarre. And to be, just so we're aware, sometimes I will be sent news items that are in publications that I'm going to be completely transparent. There are some publications that I won't share on here. Some UK publications that I won't share articles from on here. I get them rarely, but if the news item is interesting, I will go away and look it up in a different publication, because I won't, like, for example, I rarely, I'll name it. Why not? I rarely get articles from The Sun. I won't ever share an article from The Sun on this channel. No. My husband is a Liverpool FC fan. Never The Sun. Ever. Never, ever. Rather poop in my hands and clap. So I do, though, when it's an article because I don't know every publication, and when a publication pops up that I don't recognize, the other thing that I do is I go to like media bias sites to sort of see where these publications sit and where how reliable they're viewed as being, what the state media's or the state's involvement is in it, how free the press is, etc., etc. And sometimes if I think, oh, that's a bit squicky, I will then try and find the article elsewhere. And if I can't, then I may not share it, because I don't want to get involved in sharing propaganda. I'm increasingly becoming nervous about sharing articles that say DNA proves that our ancestors had this strength. I'm very careful about who's writing those, because I'm very concerned about what that is being used to say in a wider context. We know that increasingly everything's political, but we also know that there is a politicization of education and history and the reporting of fines. Some wonderful hate for the sun. Excellent. I'm glad. And it's, for me, it is political as well, but predominantly, you never walk alone. Snudpuckle has been seeing a lot of articles about Elizabeth I's DNA. Now I haven't come across that yet. I've seen a lot of stuff about the way in which they're shaping research around early human or hominin forms, and I want to say, I'm not a specialist, I'm not a geneticist, but what feels to me like leaps that are being made about strengths and weaknesses and categorizations, and I'm starting to go, oh, I don't know what the angle is here, but it makes me feel unusual. It makes me feel unusual. So another repatriation. Italy has got 337 looted antiquities back from the States. This is one of the largest, we're told, recent returns of stolen cultural property. The artifacts range from Roman sculptures to Greek, Etruscan, and Egyptian pieces, and they were presented at the headquarters of the Carabinieri following an array of investigations, many that were centered on New York. Italy has spent decades trying to curb a rampant trade in illicitly excavated antiquities and have secured the repatriation of thousands of artifacts, which would be worth tens of millions of euros. This has gained momentum in recent years because there are online databases, advanced in technology, close cooperation with the US, and this is particular, of course, with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They found 221 objects in the latest haul. I'm just going to flag up what Steve's saying, because this is what's making me uncomfortable. So the one of the reasons why I'm anxious about sharing stuff on DNA, and mostly because, first of all, I don't understand the science well enough to say whether what is being said about particular strengths or capacities or etc., whether or not that is, I don't understand the science well enough to understand whether there is a bias being spun on it. It's often tied to locations and connected to populations from those locations. And there is language that is used sometimes that I'm like, is this scientific and thus acceptable? And it just makes me feel unusual. Or is this just unusual? And there is, and I'm happy to be disabused of this as more and more of this work gets done. Like the study of DNA and the understanding of DNA is, in terms of like historical exploration, it's still in its infancy, really and truly, as to what we're actually going to find and what it might actually mean. And we sequenced the genome, obviously, but what it all means, those kinds of questions, we're still finding things out. And I will be over the moon for this not to be a reworking of eugenics, but I'm just cautious in case it is. Just cautious. Okay, so apparently some of the most significant items that went back were a marble head of Alexander the Great that dates to the 1st century AD. That was stolen from a Rome museum in 1960. And they recovered a bronze sculpture that was looted from Herculaneum, 2 Egyptian basalt statues, Roman coins, jewellery, ceramics, architectural fragments spanning from the 5th century BCE to the 3rd century CE. The United States is one of the main markets for global antiquities, with an array of auction houses, private collectors, museums, all interested in acquiring rare artifacts. Quote, sometimes they don't pay enough attention as to why these antiquities are up for sale. That can be a very costly mistake. We know what's missing and we're getting better at finding it. These recovered objects are going to be studied and, where possible, returned to their place of origin across Italy. So there we go. Our last repatriation is one coming out of London. This is the Welcome Collection. I have seen some great exhibitions at the Welcome Collection down Euston. It's near Euston. So if you're around, and lots of them are free as well, I really recommend. They put things together in a way that I think is really innovative, the ones that I've seen there. So check that out. The Colorado Crafter. Do I have any videos on Holbein, the black work embroidery? I have got some videos on Holbein, and actually I've just worked on a video on the biography of Holbein. I've got some videos on Holbein's portrait of Anne of Cleves, because I talk about whether Anne of Cleves was ugly or not, in quotes. It's mostly about the sorts of what might have been going on. And I've also done a video on Holbein shaping the Tudor court through his portrait drawings, and I'm doing a biography of him that should be out in the next couple of weeks. In terms of blackwork embroidery, I haven't done a video on that, but it is fascinating. I'm going to see if I can find somebody to sit down and talk to about the blackwork, because I think it's really fascinating. It's amazing. I've worn blackwork. It's gorgeous. Love it. So the Welcome Collection is returning 2,000 manuscripts to the Jain community. This they required in 1919 at, quote, a low price from a Jain temple in what is now Pakistan. This represents the largest group of Jain manuscripts outside South Asia, and what's referred to as a memorandum of understanding on the formal transfer is being signed at the House. It's been signed at the House of Commons. This is an unusual arrangement because this restitution is not going to be to the country of origin, but rather to a UK body, the Institute of Jainology, which is going to be deposited at the University of Birmingham. There are 60,000 Jains in the UK and 6 million in India. But they point out the situation in South Asia has become quite difficult for the Jain community after the partition of India in 1947. Our fault. So it's being returned to the community, although not to the country. And in terms of repatriation, does that count? I would say so. But again, I don't have all the answers here. These manuscripts have been acquired by Henry Wellcome, who'd made a fortune from his pharmaceutical business, hence the Wellcome Collection being very medical and scientific, because he collected a massive quantity of objects and documents relating to health and medicine. And many went to the Science Museum, but the Wellcome Collection retains archival material and artworks where they can be studied. So of these 2,000 Jain manuscripts, around 1,200 came from an unidentified temple in the Punjab area. It's named in the document as Patli, or Patli with 2 T's, maybe 1 T, maybe 2 T's. Now, there are apparently several villages and towns with this name, but no Jain temple has been able to be tracked down there. The remaining manuscripts came from a variety of unidentified sources in what is today Pakistan. Some of the manuscripts are still wrapped in the 1919 newspapers that they were enclosed in for protection during transportation. Wellcome's Indian agent in 1919, Pyra Mal, gave few details about the acquisition, but it's admitted by the head of collections from that time they were bought at, quote, a low price and against the best interests. The current head of collections points out that they were bought at the time for a low price and against the best interests of the original owners. They may have been bought for 5 rupees each. 15 rupees is then equivalent to £1, although obviously inflation means that was worth much more than it would be today. So a trustee from the UK Institute of Genealogy, who has helped to arrange this transfer, admits that, quote, Some of these manuscripts would not have survived the turmoil at the time of partition. They are therefore, quote, grateful to the Wellcome for their care and respect they have shown to these texts. And this is the other thing, is that repatriation, there can also be gratitude. This is so complex. There are no simple answers to any of this. And gratitude at documents surviving can be tempered and mixed with anger or resentment or whatever feelings people feel about the fact they were taken in the first place. I mean, yes, they were protected from the turmoil of partition, but again, who was a big part of the turmoil of partition? Who caused it? Ding, 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 the people who have the documents. So, you know, this is so complex. It's one of the reasons why I find it fascinating, but also deeply frustrating, because I think as human beings we love simple answers, but there just aren't. There aren't simple answers in this case. I think empathy goes a long way, though. So the Wellcome collection does have an enormous holding of manuscripts from other cultures. Apparently that numbers to 265,000 items. There are private discussions underway with a few other institutions about the transfer of possible materials. Because the other thing is that with that number of documents, it's hard enough to digitize them all. It's impossible to display them all. But I think also, like, preserving and protecting them, that's really expensive. And caring for them and curating them in ways that is sensitive is also difficult if you haven't necessarily got people who have the specialisms culturally. So let's see, what have we got? One good woman asked, how is AI impacting the academic study of history? Looking for patterns, looking into dating data, down to the machinery used for scanning, DNS included. There's a part of me that would really love to understand how AI can do history and be used. I'm not somebody who thinks it's going to replace a historian. I think, and I've talked about this with my husband, I think what it might at most do is it might replace a research assistant. But, you know, the times that I have tinkered and played with AI, I've done it on this channel. I was very explicit about it. I said, when we are going to ask Copilot, ChatGPT, one or the other, to write a script for my channel. I filmed it. It's on the channel. It hallucinates. It hallucinated. I asked it to cite its sources. It hallucinated footnotes, text that didn't exist, or if they did exist, the wrong author. And if they did exist and they had the wrong author and they gave a page number for the quote wasn't there. So in certain cases it quoted books that I have on my bookshelf, so I could just open them and go, well, that quote is on that page at all. And I don't believe it's in the book either. And with, you know, it's very easy to search with things like, if a book is old enough, you go into Google Books, you keyword search it, and the phrase just isn't there. So it's not there yet. I remember when they were digitizing and transcribing just so many archives. And of course, that's how the early English books online was happening. People from all around the world are digitizing their printed books, their early printed books. Then often they're being transcribed. That capture stuff was helping to transcribe it into a searchable text. And I remember lots of people saying, but if a researcher isn't doing actually in the archives archival work, is it really history? Is it really research? And I'll tell you for free, researchers are still absolutely in the archives, because even with these access to these texts that are currently in a library in Australia or New York or whatever else, depending on what you're working on, you need to see the physical book, particularly if you're looking for marginalia, if you're looking for wear patterns, because the book is a material object. So sometimes you absolutely need to look at and hold the book. However, my doctoral work would not have been possible without EBO. would not have been possible. So I'm very wary of going no AI in the study of history. And I'm also very wary about thinking that AI is going to be a net negative. I think it will be absorbed into the practice. I think it will be absorbed into the practice in ways that will allow for different historical framing to happen, for different research to happen, for different sources to be found, located, studied. It will open up worlds. And I think we're going to, the AI plagiarism will go the way of many other things, and we will just get down to using AI for something that's useful historically, is my belief. But then maybe I'm more of an optimist than I think I am, to be honest. Maybe. Julesy says, aren't research assistants usually starting to be historians? Wouldn't AI replacement impact their career path? Oh, I mean, I can only speak for the UK, but the days of a senior scholar using their PhD candidates, for example, as research assistants to do the scut work, if you will, to go and, you know, write notes in the archive, those days are long gone. Long gone. That is by no means the norm. I think there are the big public historians probably have research assistants to go and do, because if they're busy, you know, filming and writing books, etc., they may send somebody. They're like you know, they might have somebody who's in the States and they're like, can you just pop the folder for me and check this thing? That's happening for sure. But the career path for the academic, the historical academic, doesn't, in the UK at least, it doesn't involve being a research assistant. It involves doing the tutoring that most people don't want to do, that the senior scholars don't want to do. It's having an enormous workload for very little pay, and particularly if you are working as a tutor as part of your PhD or afterwards as a kind of adjunct or whatever, you don't get paid through summer. Forget maternity leave. So yeah, I don't know. I think that career path has already fallen apart. But yes, so this is very interesting, and it's another way I think repatriation can be seen to be done. We can question as to whether or not we see that as repatriation. I tend to, but I'm also happy for the conversation. I live south of Boston. I've been at Harvard libraries, allowed and held early documents. It's essentially a both and rather than an either or, but it's going to change our economy at scale. Oh yeah, oh for sure. It is. This is another industrial revolution, I think. You know, my husband said if he knew somebody who was going to go into bookkeeping now, or was going to train to be a bookkeeper, my husband said that he would say, don't train to be a bookkeeper, train to manage AI, and to create AI that can do your bookkeeping for you. That's what he suggests. I think that you know, people who worked in cloth weaving didn't go away as a job because the cloth making machines, the spinning jenny question mark, came in. Snudpuckle AI does hallucinate, like you and as Steve said, you know, I don't trust AI. You can ask it to collect the sources, you need to do, but you can't ask it to collect the sources, you need to do some research. I think potentially it could work as a research assistant, but you're always, if you're going to work from it, you are going to need to then check your sources yourself, as you presumably would with a research assistant, having never had one. Again, question mark. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see, I think. Jennifer points out, oh, sorry. I'll come back one second, James. As an accountant, we're praying for AI. I fear scams increasing. Oh, yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah, that's for sure. I think that we're going to be careful about that, definitely. James asked what books people enjoy at the moment. Henry V by Dan Jones and Children of England by Alison Weir. Oh, they sound, yes. I need to, do you know what? At the moment, the only way I'm reading is audiobooks because I never have my hands free, but I drive, so I can bang an audiobook on and listen to it. And my favorite is when the author reads the audiobook. I like that the best. And as a dyslexic as well, I get much more reading done and I retain it better as well. If I really need to retain it, then I might have it read to me while I look at the book. Then I double bubble. So let's hop into some new news. A 13-year-old boy, we've got one of our League of Extraordinary Child Archaeologists, has found a bronze coin in a field. It's turned out to be the first ancient Greek artifact discovered in Berlin, minted in Troy in the 3rd century BCE. They think it might have been buried as a gift for the dead, but they don't know exactly how it ended up in modern-day Germany. This was found in a field on the outskirts of Berlin. When the boy found it, he knew he'd found something special. But it wasn't until the object was analysed that scholars realised how significant it actually was. This is the first ancient Greek artifact ever unearthed in the German capital. It was shown to researchers in November 2025, and it was identified as a Trojan coin dating to roughly 281 to 261 BCE. It depicts Athena, Greek goddess of war and wisdom, in a Corinthian helmet, with on the reverse is an image of the deity in a kalaphos headdress with a spear in her right hand and a spindle in the other. There was thoughts that it might have been lost by a modern-day collector in the western part of Berlin, or maybe deposited in the ground close to its creation. But it was soon realised that where this was found was actually was a well-known archaeological site. There were excavations there in the 50s and the 70s, meaning where they realised they thought the area was potentially being used as a burial ground, maybe as being as early as the Iron Age. Artifacts uncovered at the site included ceramic fragments, a bronze button, and a Slavic knife sheath fitting. This coin is only 12 millimeters in diameter, so it's significantly smaller than apparently an American dime. It would have, therefore, they say, have held little value for Germanic-speaking people. With no systems of currency, they view coins from outside groups mainly as a source of silver, gold, or other precious metals. Ancient coins that weren't melted down for reuse have been found in burial grounds, suggesting that they were put in the graves as a kind of grave gift. They don't know how the coin got from Troy to Berlin, though. I don't know how they're going to figure that out either. They are only able to speculate currently. Possibly trade, but it's also been suggested that the ancient Greeks might have recruited Germanic people as soldiers, just as the Romans would some centuries later. Quote, "We have time periods, especially in the Iron Age, where we have a population loss, and we don't know where the people went. Suddenly they disappear. Maybe they're going down to the Greeks, joining the military forces there." However, they point out this is not even a hypothesis, it's an idea only. Interesting, I think. We have got a Roman superhighway buried deep underground. This is again in Germany. They have found a straight riverbed-like anomaly that they have determined to be a early Roman canal that connected the Rhine with Roman Empire fortlets and settlements. It seems that the central purpose of this would have been to connect to the Roman fortlet of Treber Astein. This is in Germany's Upper Rhine Graben. The canal would have been a major engineering project, reshaping the environment as early as the 1st century CE. It is, though, one of the only examples of a navigable Roman canal that was constructed north of the Alps in the early Middle Ages. This was not a secondary channel of the River Rhine, but rather an artificial canal belonging to the Landgraben-Schwarzbach fluvial system. The team suggests that the canal they found was, quote, constructed during a time when the rest of the River Landgraben was intensely used by the Romans. So this is where they can transport material, troops, and it helps them to secure the territory of the Roman Empire. Look, there's a reason why the Romans found London where they do, because the Thames is really useful. It's really useful. This canal would have been constructed between the 4th and 4th century CE. The now buried canal offered Romans a water-based superhighway through a region they had a firm grasp on. It even ran through the site of an earlier Roman military camp that had been occupied briefly in around 14 to 20 CE. How interesting is that? What a lot of work. Brilliant. Because we think about, Roman roads, but equally canals and waterways, just transportation geniuses. Colorado Craft asked a great question. What kind of boats went down that? Excellent question. If they're moving people and supplies, I don't know if the artificial canal works similarly to how a modern canal. I don't know if they're talking about there being locks or anything like that. But would it potentially be a kind of flat-bottomed craft? Could it have been deeper? I don't know. Julesy suggests barges. That's my first thought, was barges. But it's 8 feet deep and 50 feet wide. So it's going to have to be fairly flat bottom, but it could be, catamaran expansive, couldn't it? Because 8 feet's not, 8 feet's not deep enough for a warship, but it's definitely deep enough for a kind of flat bottom barge. James Byers suggests it could be a speedboat. Yes. It would have been just furiously pedaled by a collection. So they get the kind of speedboat propeller going. They've just got a collection of dormice just furiously pedaling. Because everything I ever learned about the Romans involved stuffed dormice. They did bang on about stuffed dormice. Maybe they're using dormice to go down their canals. Who knows? Right. Centuries ago, there was a shade of purple so valuable that Cleopatra marked her sailboat with it. Roman emperors threatened to kill anyone who used it, and the Catholic Church decided it was for religious leaders and the decoration of holy texts only. However, they have found in York, in England, the remains, the burial of 2 infants covered in a cloth that uses this dye, Tyrian purple. Would have been made in modern day Lebanon through an elaborate process that involves the crushing of thousands of murex sea snails. Tyrian purple is worth more than its weight in gold. A team from the University of York found the pigment in 2 graves from the late 3rd to early 4th century. A stone sarcophagus held a baby wrapped in Tyrian purple cloth between 2 adults. A tiny lead coffin held an infant only a few months old, who was, quote, covered in 2 layers of textiles, a tasseled shawl, and over that, a fine textile of Tyrian purple and gold embroidery. The archaeologists are unsure why people used gypsum in their burial, which they found. So the bodies and the fabric pieces were decayed, but some burials can be detected because of this practice. They bury their dead with liquid gypsum in the coffin. This creates a plaster cast that preserves the imprints. They don't know why they did this. They have this casing, and it shows the precise position of the bodies and their relationship to each other at exactly the moment where the liquid gypsum was poured over them and the lid of the coffin closed about 1700 years ago. The gypsum also preserved the shape of the cloth and the trace of the purple dye and the flecks of gold from the gold thread. This is the first time this dye has been found in textiles in York. Quote, indicating that the city's wealthy inhabitants did have access to expensive and exotic commodities from the other end of the empire. It's incredibly rare to see this type of burial treatment for young children, especially for the baby in the lead grave, who was only a few months old and buried alone. They point out that infant mortality is high, so public mourning for children under a year was uncommon, let alone one featuring the most valuable dye in the Roman Empire. So this is telling us about the importance of children in the Roman York, and the willingness for family to give their baby the best possible send-off in tragic circumstances. Unless, of course, it's telling us about the importance of the baby they found. How interesting. How interesting. Steve points out that he thinks it's something like 10,000 snails for 1 gram of dye. Very, very interesting. So yeah, maybe we'll find out more. We'll see what happens as more research comes out. If there's an update, I will, of course, let you know. Olivia Finley asked, was this an aristocratic child? I think that's the assumption. It's certainly an incredibly wealthy child. Or it was buried on the orders of and with the payment of somebody who was wealthy. People asking, are the snails endangered or extinct? Quite no idea. Can we still make Tyrian purple? Like, would it still be possible? I'm sure we can replicate it with artificial dyes, but can we? I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Next up, we've got a shiny thing. You know how I'm a magpie. This is one of them. Here we go. Look at this. This is a hiker. This is a hiker going on a wander, and they have found a 6th century gold sword scabbard under a fallen tree. Will you look at it? So cool. So cool. So this is a 1,500-year-old sword scabbard crafted from gold. It's thought unlikely that this was some lowly soldier. I would agree to that. It's about 2.4 inches wide and less than 1 inch tall. It weighs about 1.15 ounces. And you can sort of see the patterning that's going on. There's a little image down the bottom about these kind of interlocking images. The researchers have identified clear regional artistic stylings that match those that were seen during the migration period of the 300s to 600 CE. This is a period of widespread shifting power dynamic across Europe and the fall of the Western Roman Empire. You've got decorations including animal and possible human-animal hybrid illustrations arranged symmetrically across the piece. There are remnants of filigree embellishments, evidence of a finely beaded gold wiring that would have helped to create an overall shimmering effect. The site this was found has been examined, and it's been determined the scabbard wasn't accidentally deposited or discarded, but carefully placed inside a crack in the bedrock. This is therefore believed that this was a religious offering to the gods. This act itself would have been a signifier of power and wealth. Giving up such a ritual adornment would have been a leader's way of both reiterating his power while pleading for divine aid. Taken together, the discovery represents an extraordinary moment for archaeologists that will help them better understand this region's social dynamics and the social dynamics during the migration period. And it's really cool as well. And do you know what? It's not the only really cool, shiny thing. because look, this one's in Denmark. Will you just for a minute? This is a brooch, pals, and this gentleman's holding it up. So we've got an ear and a beard for scale. It's supposed to be a banana. Obviously, didn't get the memo, but we've got an ear for scale here. This is a late Germanic Iron Age brooch being found by a metal detectorist, Mikkel Warming. Dated provisionally to the mid-6th century AD and found whilst he was metal detecting. It's approximately 40 millimeters in length. It's intensely decorated, as we can see, with these circular motifs in a regular pattern. It's filigreed, they think, or maybe granulated techniques. So this is either way, it's advanced metalworking skill. There's a uniformity of decorative elements that suggest a controlled production method and specialist craftsmanship. So cool. These are, it shares features with short arm brooches that are known from the late Germanic Iron Age. The fastening mechanism includes an iron pin, which is now corroded and consolidated into a compact mass. Gold brooches of this type are uncommon in the archaeological world, particularly those exhibiting dense and technically demanding surface ornamentation. These are objects generally interpreted as indicators of social differentiation, and they might relate to personal display, identity, or regional stylistic traditions. This artifact is being submitted to a local museum for formal analysis, where experts are going to conduct a typological comparison, a metallurgical characterization, and a contextual assessment. This will help to assist in determining production techniques, material composition, and cultural affiliation. So we potentially will find out more. It's very cool. It's very shiny. And I like it. Oh, on the Tyrian purple, Rhombahedral points out that YouTube's got several videos of people making the dye today. And Steve got the fact about how many snails for the 1 gram of dye from the BBC. Thank you very much. We always have a cited source. More cool stuff. This is also very cool, and it would have been very shiny. There's many shiny things. There's a list of shiny things. I think maybe I might have gone overboard on all the shiny sources, or they're all grouped around one time period. Because I'm just looking at the next one going, that's also potentially shiny too. So a magical mirror used by the powerful queen of a British tribe, potentially, was found in an Iron Age hoard, and it's now on display. Look at it. Isn't it cool? This was found 5 years ago by Ding Ding Ding, a metal detectorist, a field in northern England. They found some ancient-looking metal. And researchers from Durham University then went on to excavate some 800 iron and copper alloy artifacts at the site, including 2,000-year-old horse bridle bits, a feasting cauldron, and a mirror signifying female power. This is an incredible hoard to have found. The team said they were lost for words. This is the largest. It's called the Melsonby hoard, which is it's close to the Yorkshire village by the same name, and it's the largest collection of Iron Age metalwork ever found in the UK. So cool. It's going up on display at the Yorkshire Museum. Chariots, Treasure and Power, the secret of the Melsonby hoard. So if anyone's going up to Yorkshire Museum and they get a chance to see this, please report back. So it opened on May 15th, so 10 days ago, and it's going all through to the summer of 2027. Haven't got a closing date for it yet, but it's very, very cool. So the thing you're seeing held by the blue/purple gloves, that's a bit of horse harness. My goodness. What's being this greeny blue oxidized thing, that is a cauldron on display in the exhibition. Very excellent. Very excellent. Steeler Bear, why don't they make replicas of these gorgeous findings for us to purchase? So I've seen people do talk about how they have made some replicas, but not of the stuff I want. So here's what I want a replica of, right? I want a replica of Elizabeth I's locket ring. I want that. I want a replica of Queen Victoria's mourning brooch, the heart with the cross coming out of it that says Alice in diamonds, but I want like someone, I want to be able to pick the name you put on it. There are many things. Of course, there are people who are doing excellent replicas of jewellery and portraits now. And you can find them on social media. There are some great, particularly Tudor jewellery. So they replicas are being made. But I think, particularly in, museums, if there were replicas of stuff, like good replicas, people would definitely buy it in the gift shop. Definitely. Steve says, this one I want to go to Yorkshire Museum to see. It's one of the few Celtic chariots found. Ooh. Ooh. Let me know what you think of that. Stephen Bear agrees to Elizabeth's ring, I see. And as Amy agrees with me, they never make replicas of things I want. So they do make replicas, but you get some really cool stuff. And it's like, this is not in copyright. There's no way this is in copyright. Make me a replica at once. Snudpuckle wants a real lightsaber. I fear they potentially are quite close to making one of those. And people are going to start burning through their skin with lasers, come to think of it. Marianne Rosie, a road trip. Look, that kid's got 6 weeks summer holiday. I'm going to have to find things to do with him. And the car's got aircon. Maybe. He does love a museum. This is... Oh, Steve's got a good 60th birthday present. A pen using bog oak from Vindolanda. That's cool. There's so many reasons why this community is great. It's because, like, either we are each other's nerd friends, right? In which case we can share ideas. Or if you also happen to be lucky enough to have a nerd friend in your life on the daily, present ideas. Spectacular. My husband's just shown that he knows what the Elizabeth I ring is. He says, do you mean the checkers ring? I do mean the checkers ring, Mr. Cat. I do mean the checkers ring. I have issues with calling it the checkers ring because I like to call it Elizabeth I locket ring. Because for me, it is a point of personal rage that it's at Chequers, which is, of course, the private residence of the Prime Minister of this country. And I'm like, why does it live there? Why isn't it on display permanently for the public? So I don't like calling it the Chequers ring, even though it's factually accurate, because I like to live in the denial where it's all of us. So this, again, shiny head. So a ship has been found in Norway, older than the Vikings. They found a monumental ship burial in Norway, and it's rewriting the history of a practice that's largely been associated to the Viking Age in Scandinavia. They now think that these boat and ship burials predated the Vikings in Norway by at least 100 years and covered a wider area than previously known. They are researching a well-known mound. Experts have found a large seafaring vessels that were in use before Viking law dominated the landscape. Steve's going to send me a picture of that. Thank you. So the Vikings weren't the first to get into the business of monumental ship burial mounds in Norway. Turns out that they were burying ships under piles of earth, and that was happening at least 100 years before the Vikings made it famous. This is a new study that's been published in the journal Antiquity. They have used metal detectors and radiocarbon dating, and doing so, they've pulled up 29 iron rivets, dated charcoal and wood remains, some still attached to iron nails. This was once a mighty ship dated to 700 CE. That's roughly 100 years before the Vikings took control of the area. So this mound is got a powerful seafaring vessel that spans 65 feet. So this is evidence of Norwegian maritime expertise prior to the Vikings' arrival. It also fills gaps in ship burial lore. The earliest known ship burials in Europe are those at Sutton Hoo, dated to between 600 and 625 CE. This, though, new research, quote, provides a chronological bridge between the early 7th century ship burials of Anglo-Saxon England and Norway's famous late 8th and 9th century ship burials. It also puts into question a long-held myth, according to which the pre-Viking King Herlag sequestered himself into the mound and died inside of it, with his remains allegedly being exhumed in the 18th century. But the new dating of this ship puts its burial to roughly 80 years before the death of this king, making the premise of that myth implausible. So forget this is the new king in the car park. We've another myth's been busted. How cool is that? This new excavation reveals that the phenomenon of monumental ship graves was not restricted to southern Scandinavia. The northern Norwegian coast was also integrated into networks established in the 7th and 8th centuries. This monumental ship mound at Leka represents another piece of the puzzle for understanding the social development of Northern Europe in the 7th to 10th centuries. How cool! So cool. We're staying sort of with Vikings, but coins more shiny. An English king minted these coins to ward off a Viking invasion. Instead, the seafaring raiders turned them into jewellery. That is sassy. Ethelred the Unready viewed the attacks on his kingdom as divine retribution. He hoped that through a show of public penance, including the creation of coins featuring faith imagery, he could help himself and his nation earn God's forgiveness. These are a kind of prayer, then. They are part of a religious response to Viking attacks. These are the Lamb of God coins, and they have resurfaced in Denmark. This is, of course, where the Vikings would call home. And it seems they turned these pennies into jewellery. These have been found at two separate locations in Denmark several years ago. One, you can see a lamb pierced by a cross, which is an allusion to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. While on the other, there is a dove symbolizing the Holy Spirit. 30 Lamb of God coins are known to survive today. Most specimens surfacing in Scandinavia and the Baltics rather than the country in which they were minted. Many of the pennies found in the Viking territory contain holes, suggesting they were worn around the neck, perhaps as an amulet. The Vikings, though, didn't view the English coins solely as a fashion statement. Quote, they quickly realised the coins were much more practical for trade than cutting up pieces of silver, and Viking kings therefore began copying English coins and the English monetary system. Harald Hardrada was the first Norwegian king apparently to introduce standardized currency, minting silver pennies that featured a cross and a symbol representing the Holy Trinity. Last month, metal detectorists in Norway stumbled across the country's largest ever Viking hoard. And we talked about this. It included a cache of 2,970 silver coins, and they're still counting. There's more to come. They had likenesses of Harold, Ethelred, and Knut the Great, or Knut the Great. There's the Oslo-based historical museum states on its website that foreign coins like Ethelred circulated widely in Norway prior to Harold's reign, but they were soon replaced by the Viking king's own currency. The Lamb of God coins are, quote, important pieces in the puzzle of Denmark and England at times of very troubled shared history. That is really what makes these coins so fascinating. Such small objects contain a huge story about English kings, Christianity, Viking raids, and even the beginning of Danish coinage and the Danish state itself. In many ways, they reflect an entire society. How they're also really, they're really kind of like ornately decorated. Excellent. Let's see what we. Coco creates. Not gonna lie, that's what I do if someone made a coin toward me. I mean, in fairness, there's a part of me that is deeply spiteful human being, and also there's another part of me that goes, oh, we're having a problem, are we? Spectacular, let's escalate this issue. So I'm like, there's a button I can press, is there? I'm gonna poke that bear. Let's go. Let's have a fight if we have to. So yeah, I feel very similar. But I would do it for shade. I would do it shade them. Steve does point out that the Vikings did used to wear their wealth. It's hard to lose. And do you know what? That's also the case for much of history. I mean, when I talk about the Elizabethan theatre, for example, and the role they had in money lending, one of the ways they would lend money is nobles might come in with their really fine garments, in some cases heavily bejeweled garments, and they would give it to the theatre company, and the theatre company would get the money out of their coffers, the box office fund, and they would give them ready cash, because nobles have extraordinary amounts of wealth coming in, sure, but it's going out to pay people and this thing and that thing, other thing, and it's also in their homes, it's in the arms they put on their retainers, it's on their clothing. They don't have bank accounts, they have coffers full of coin, maybe that can get spent. If they need more, they need to pawn, in quotes, some other stuff. And so that is, and in many cases the theatre companies would go, all right, perfect, let's do that, and then we'll use it as costume too. Okay, spectacular, it works out for everybody. And that way you can loan money without having to do usury, because you're getting value out of the clothing. And also the protection of the nobles that are working with you. Venomous Care Bear, do it for the plot. I'll tell you for free. The older I get, I'm like, do it for the plot. That I think to myself, I could take the mature choice here. I don't have to say this. I have got an option to not, but I kind of want to see what happens if I say it. So, yeah, I'm very much a do it for the plot kind of gal. The older I get, the worse I get as well. Here we go. On the other way, we've got a metal detectorist finding a silver coin that's part of a stash buried during the Viking invasion of Britain. This one wasn't taken back. They found 63 coins, which bears the name King Burgred of Mercia. They think it was hidden in the 9th century to keep it safe at a time of unrest. So in 2022, there are people in an English field in Bickmarsh, and they've got metal detectors. This is a very fun hobby that finds many shiny things. At 9 a.m., one of the attendees found a silver coin in the dirt. Then another individual found a cache of 5 or 6 more. So the area gets cordoned off, and slowly but surely, more and more coins are popping up. Now, researchers who've looked at these coins have got new insights on the hoard. They're thought to have been buried between 871 and 874 CE, so a very small window of about 3 years. Perhaps it's thought that these coins were buried to protect it from being found by Viking raiders. In the space of a weekend, they found 25 coins. Then there were excavations after that unearthed another 38 at the site. This is only the second of its kind to be found in Worcestershire, which is in the West Midlands. These are also very cool. 2 of the new discovered coins are Frankish pennies from Northern Europe. Another is an imitation of a gold solidus minted under Louis the Pious, son of the Frankish king Charlemagne. Archaeologists in Britain have previously unearthed more than 20 such specimens, including a gold coin that was turned to a pendant by a Viking soldier, linking to the previous. So for now, though, the Bickmarsh Hall is leaving them with more questions than answers, but it's giving them a rare glimpse into a moment where even quiet rural landscapes in Worcestershire may have felt the ripple effects of events of the reshaping of Anglo-Saxon England. I've just seen this quote from Snudpuckle. I'm gonna say, this is the do it for the plot. There are things I could choose not to say, but I'm going to say them. How did humans function before caffeine? Cocaine. Class A substances as we see them now. How they did it. They were pepped up. Don't take drugs, kids. It's not cool. But yeah, that was the other option. I think. It's like when they say, oh, all these 50s housewives, they didn't go out to work. They were happy at home. They had, 2.4 kids and their husbands' slippers were always on the floor and they had all these kids and they never went to the gym, but they kept their weight. Yes, sure, Babs, of course they did. Because they were off their box on speed during the day and then they were taking downers to sleep at night. They were tripping to deal with it. Good times. Good times. Not for them. Probably not for them. Heavily medicated. A new copy. I got sent this loads. This is really cool. A new copy of the earliest English poem has been discovered in Rome. This was found in the National Central Library of Rome, and it was found by researchers from Trinity College, Dublin. This is an early 9th century manuscript that contains Caedmon, that's probably pronounced wrong, Caedmon's hymn. This is a short Old English poem written more than 1,300 years ago, and it's the very start of English literary history. This is the oldest surviving copy of this poem, dating to around 800 to 830 CE. What sets apart this version is that this is where the Old English text appears. The two older surviving manuscripts are in Latin copies of Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People, with the Old English lines added later in margins right at the end. In the Rome manuscript, the Old English poem sits directly inside the main Latin text. This is a 9-line poem praising God as creator of the world. According to medieval tradition, the poem was composed by a cowherd linked to Whitby Abbey, which is in present-day North Yorkshire. According to Bede, he tells the story of a man who left a feast embarrassed because he could not perform poetry, then experienced a dream in which he was instructed to sing about creation. Love it. I love it. Only around 3 million words of Old English survive today, and most come from the 12th and 11th centuries. So this is far rarer, and this is therefore especially important in this text when studying the earliest English phases of the English language. Scholars have identified this as the earliest surviving text of Northumbrian Urdu recension, a textual version of the poem distinguished by a particular wording in line 5b. Before this discovery, the earliest known manuscript preserving this recension came from the late 12th century. So this pushes the known existence of this version back by more than 300 years. We couldn't perform poetry. Okay. I mean, yeah, that's fair. But also, this is like the kind of the great hall spaces. There is all the way through the sort of medieval period into the early modern period, at courts, at high houses, that necessity to be articulate and witty and artistic and creative is as much as part of the job as being a political animal. This is one of the reasons why, for example, when you have the expulsion of the minions, that Wolsey wants to get rid of some of Henry's hangers-on, and he sort of handpicks the ones that can stay, and they are families loyal to him. What you're seeing there is you're seeing, as they say, the son of an Ipswich butcher telling the nobility that the boys they have paid a fortune to educate, dress, give all of the tools, techniques, and aptitudes to make them appropriate to be at court, fluent in languages, rhetoric, witty, they can dance, they can fight, they can ride a horse, they've got a horse, they've paid for the horse and the armor to go with the horse. The guy's got a hanger of armor, he's got all of these suits encrusted with jewels. This guy is now going home to Buxton or Buckinghamshire or Norfolk because Wolsey says so. Ding ding ding. And that is why. So yeah, being kind of part of the can perform poetry crowd, that's how you end up rising through the ranks. With that being said, one of the Henry II's, apparently, one of Henry II's favourite entertainers was the wonderfully named Roland the Farter. And his particular skill that amused King Henry II so much was that he could, at order, leap, whistle, and fart all in one go. Now, I wouldn't try that at home, kids. Certainly don't try too hard, if you know what I mean. I'm just checking. I'm just double checking the pictures I've got coming up now, because it is a tomb picture and I'm almost 100% sure that there are no human remains on display. However, I'm just doubting myself. I think it's fine. I think it's just gold chunks and pots, I believe. I can't see human remains. I just have to double check there because I was like, my eyes played tricks on me. What we have here, a golden trove. More shiny things. What is it with May? My goodness. Maybe it's time to play the lottery, friends. That's not advice to gamble. Don't take that advice if you don't gamble. This is in Panama. Look at it. Look at what they found, Willia. So this is pre-Hispanic. It's the richest burial trove to be discovered to date. It includes 5 breastplates, as well as jewelry ranging from belts adorned with golden beads, gold-plated earrings crafted from sperm whale teeth. What? Okay, cool. Skirts made with dog teeth and a collection of bone flutes also found, and then hundreds of beautifully preserved ceramics. These are, quote, not only of economic value, but also incalculable historical and cultural value. Yeah, too right. These were found in the Cochlea region. The civilization there flourished from 700 to 1000 CE. It was a civilization known for its sophisticated culture and characterized by skilled craftsmanship, elaborate ceremonial practices, and complex social structures, and lots of shiny gold. The tally of the bodies buried in this grave is unknown. The excavation remains underway. This area, El Cano, served as a necropolis around 700 CE, being abandoned in 1000 CE. The City of the Dead featured monoliths, a cemetery, and a ceremonial area. There's a unique nature of these burial, which saw up to 232 people interred in the same tomb alongside high status individuals. My goodness, can you imagine digging that up? Can you imagine? It's incredible. Steve questions whether they're buried so the Spanish couldn't find them. Well, it seems that they didn't, thank goodness. Otherwise, those would have been melted down so quickly. Snudpuckle points out that Indigenous American flutes are beautiful sounding. I don't think I've had the privilege. I'm going to have to go and I'm sure I can look that up somewhere, perhaps. How cool. Julesy asks, is the bracelet in the picture of the side still around an arm? I looked at that long and hard. I think I'm almost sure it's around a clump of mud. Like that's soil in both. I'm almost positive that's just soil. it says gold artifacts excavated from the tomb. I'm pretty sure it's just soil. I'm fairly comfortable. And I don't think that's a grill in the one above it. I think that's also a bangle that's also just in soil. I did, when I looked at it, I was like, I sort of stopped myself and went, oh, hang on, have I got this wrong? Because as we know, I don't show human remains. And when I first saw it and cut and paste and copied and pasted, I was like, no, that's fine. And then I looked at it again on my iPad and I'm like, oh, I don't think it is, though. I don't think so. Okay. Now, this almost went ding dong, but he's done the right thing. So I didn't ding dong him. I've put him in new news. A man who pocketed tiles from a medieval priory as a boy has returned them 60 years later. Look, my kid has to be patted down, because if he finds a stone that he thinks is nice, that's in his pocket. I've said to him, if these pebbles go through my washing machine and my tumble dryer and they break my washing machine, I'm going to be very cross. I'm going to be livid. But, so I sort of understand this. He was 9 when he did this. So, they were decorative clay tiles dating from the late 13th, early 14th century, taken by a guy called Simon White when he went to Wenlock Priory in Shropshire in the late 1960s. He's now 68 and clearly feels very embarrassed. He found the fragments in an old toffee tin during a house move and owned up to English heritage. And do you know what? I actually think that's really, like, it's not ideal that a 9-year-old's pinch them back in the 60s, but but I think good for him for owning up now. Quote, I can remember the day all this happened with my father standing guard. Dad's a ding dong then. Heaven knows what he would have said if we'd been caught. What happened to the tiles afterwards, I'm not really sure, but they survived numerous house moves and assorted family upheavals, only to turn up in my loft this year in a battered tin. So he looked at family diaries and figured that they probably came from Wenlock Priory, and then he contacted English Heritage. The assistant curator for English Heritage said that White was right to pinpoint Wenlock as the scene of the act. Tiles like the ones that he took were known to have existed in only 3 places in Shropshire: Hormond Abbey, Bridgenorth Friary, and Wenlock Primary. As Bridgenorth had no in situ tile and wasn't excavated until after Simon's trip, and Hormond only had a small patch of tile still at the site, that narrows it down to being Wenlock Priory. The tiles aren't going to be put back into the floor, but they're going to be moved to an English Heritage archaeology store for further analysis. He said that since he retired, he's taken a keen interest in archaeology. He's joined a local society, and he thinks they're likely to take a dim view of his action. It's only right and proper the tiles are returned home. Jessie points out, at least he kept them back and gave them back instead of throwing them away. Yeah, I think that's the thing is, I think when that many years elapse, you might think, oh, I can't bring myself to confess to this. I can understand that. It's very human. So actually, I think he should get some praise for being, he forgot they were probably even there. He found them and he went, oh my gosh, I know I've pinched these from somewhere. They should definitely go back. When you learn more, you do better. The more you know, the better you do, right? And yeah, Weezy, he was only 9. And to be honest, the stuff that was going on in heritage sites in the 60s, enough to make one's heart arrest. And I tell you, there's a picture of things going on at Hampton Court Palace, early photographs. I'm not quite sure of the exact date, but in the Great Hall, for example, there are benches silent inward scream. There are benches where their backs are very clearly up against the Abraham tapestries. God bless. God bless. When I saw that, I had a small conniption. I mean, I say small. I was like, I was showing everybody that would look. I was like, will you see what they've done here? Can you believe it? Steve points out, you could climb on the stones at Stonehenge back then. Oh boy, okay. Wow, good times. Good times. This is really interesting. Medieval manuscripts would not have been silent. A study finds that images triggered sounds in viewers' minds. I don't understand this. I'll be so for real, but I think it's fascinating. So this is basically pointing out this medieval art is not supposed to be experienced as a silent visual display, according to this new study. Instead, images that you find in religious settings like churches, cathedrals, and pilgrimage centres would have triggered imagined sounds in the minds of viewers. So there are multi-sensory experiences being triggered by effectively static pictures. So this is being published in the journal Religions. And the scholar has been looking at the Harley roll. This is preserved in the British Library. And it tells the story of St. Guthlac through 18 circular illustrations. The Harley roll has been compared with earlier written biographies of Guthlac, and the comparison showed the scroll's illustrator did more than simply copy material. In some scenes, visual details were added that seemed designed to bring familiar sounds to mind. So, for example, travelling by boat to Crowland or Crowland. In early texts, this is described only briefly, but in the roll, it's been expanded visually with curved waves, angled sails, moving oars, suggesting the splash of water, the creaking of wood, the ropes tightening in the wind, the rhythm of rowing. For medieval viewers, particularly those familiar with the river or coastal travel, this would have had really strong associations. There's another one where you see Guthlac building his dwelling. The accounts mention only a modest structure, but the scroll depicts a much busier construction process, with labourers carrying stone and working with tools. So wood hammering, scraping, repeated sounds of building activity have been heard in the mind. The evidence suggests that these construction details reflected architecture more familiar to 12th century audiences than to Guthlac's own earlier period. This process, they believe, helped create what Brooks is describing as a framework of a, quote, sound milieu, an immersive sensory environment shaped by sound sources, listeners, and surrounding vibrations. In medieval pilgrimage settings, this imagined layer of sound blended with real environmental noise. So this potentially means that for medieval worshippers standing inside a church or a monastery, an image of a saint was not a quiet object on a page or a wall. It was part of a larger sensory setting, one shaped by movement, ritual, architecture, and the sounds people carried in their own minds. And while I don't think I fully comprehend what this would be like, I think I have an idea. And the one thing it makes me think of is that this just is another layer of assault, of destruction, of the reshaping of the mind that comes with Reformation. Right? The stripping of the images from the walls of churches, from alcoves on the road, from chapels, the kind of destruction of pilgrimage locations, banning and burning of books. What did the post-Reformation world feel quieter to people experiencing it? Because you sort of think about the various forms of loss or shift that might have gone on. But was the stripping also a silencing? Brian points out that between this and the old English poem, the medieval times were noisier than imagined. Yeah, I mean, look, it's brighter than you imagine. Massive primary colours. On the furniture, on yourself, if you could afford it. So super bright colours. Lots of smells, and not bad smells, but food cooking and perfumed water if you were wealthy enough to wash your hands and your face in. The feel of linen on your body, sleeping in linen, etc. The sound of the rustle of your mattresses moving as you roll to get comfortable. But yeah, music and reading aloud and conversation and poems and just constant. No one's alone, right? Unless you live as a hermit, no one's alone. Kings aren't alone. They don't sleep alone. They don't poop alone. No one's alone. There's always a constant hubbub of sound. Just sound and visual, and that goes all the way through. This notion of people having separate bedrooms and privacy and lockable doors, that is a incredibly modern invention. And I mean, even well into the sort of early decades, mid decades of the 20th century, only the sort of incredibly wealthy would have their own bedrooms and their children would have their own bedrooms. The sorts of people where their children get sent to boarding school, for the majority of people, they're all sharing beds. Kids are sharing beds, sometimes with just the kids, sometimes with parents as well. I mean, it's the natural human thing. It's been much more natural for human beings to co-sleep and bed share than for people to have individual bedrooms. That is a decades old experience. And this is really interesting. Miss Amy, I can see the argument, but could only be possible for those viewers who have experienced those sounds before. The same could be argued for Pain State image take us to a known place. I think they definitely do. I think you can read books and can take you to a known place. But for example, take the boat, for example. I think that is potentially a more universal experience for people at that time than it would be for us, because they are moving by river. They are sometimes the quickest way to get around somewhere is by sea. And my husband's talking about the smell of our children and what we have to deal with their odors. But yes, I think these are possibly more universal, and I think also building work is likely a more universal sound. I think there's types of building work because the notion of sort of a longevity of building, that again, you only have to look at what Henry's doing. There's almost constantly building works at his properties. There's no conception of a grade 1 listed property. You pull a bit of stone here and you move it over there. So I think people would have been quite used to hearing building works going on around the place. Maybe. But yeah, interesting, I think. Carol's cat has her own bedroom. I mean, as we all know, it's a cat's world. We just live in it. Talking about smells, what do we feel about this, friends? A medieval latrine in Germany, from which has been excavated a pristine leather notebook. There is not enough Dettol on earth. I mean, this person's wearing gloves. Understandable. It's preserved a Latin cursive for centuries. So, this is archaeologists working for the Westphalia Lippe Regional Association, or the LWL. and they've been excavating medieval latrines. They've done 5. I mean, what a weird niche to have, but good luck to you. From the dank chambers, they found this 800-year-old pocket notebook, 10 pages in near perfect condition. It's made... Steve, don't lick the archaeology, particularly if it's come out of a latrine. No. Brian, is it a wallet? No, it's a leather bound. So it's a decorative leather bound notebook. So what we've got here is a booklet made of wood and wax, bound in a leather cover that's embossed with lilies. The binding is tight enough that it protected the inner pages from the surrounding contaminants. That's a nice way of putting it, over the centuries. So inside they found the legible writing. Apparently, it's not easy to decipher, even for experts in the field. Individual words are recognizable, but the transcription is going to take some time, as some words might have been corrupted by incorrect spellings. Same, babe. Same. The wax layers of the pages would allow the writer to erase what they've written using the flat end of a stylus. So there's a quick scan that seems that there are records of business transactions. So perhaps this belongs to a merchant. Certainly, this is it's a decorated piece, right? It's not free to decorate leather. Do you know what I mean? There is a plan to fully transcribe the book after analysing all of its materials. It's in Latin, so they think upper class owner. And also the social status of the latrine users, they find scraps of silk fabric being used as toilet paper. Good Lord. Okay. For archaeologists, we're told latrines are almost always a treasure trove. What a time to be alive. Wow. Apparently, the humidity and soil conditions of the region, combined with the airtight nature of the chambers, result in the perfect environment for preserving such delicate artifacts. So it wasn't anything that was preserved. Even after many centuries in the ground, the latrine fire still had a rather unpleasant odour. What a shock. What a shock. So it's thought that it probably slipped out of somebody's pocket and into a commode or into the cesspit. They think that's how it got into the German latrine. Whether the owner didn't notice or decided that retrieving it wasn't worth the effort. They say we need to remember that people drop things into toilet cellars now. It lands in this is a quote, friends. This is a no eating quote. It lands in a smush, then it gets covered up. ... If the cesspit doesn't get cleared out or gets abandoned, it's just there, waiting to be found, which is amazing. I look forward to reading the transcription through my computer and nowhere. Do you know what? This is why I'm glad we have digitized things, because I'm going to be so for real. This is not an object that I need to handle. No, thank you. No, thank you. But I'm glad they found it. There we are. I don't know how I feel about this one. I don't know. So this has been doing the rounds. I've been sent this a lot. It's been obviously a topic of conversation. May is the anniversary of Anne Boleyn's death. If you follow history, then no doubt you will have seen, usually starting on or around the 1st of May, the countdown to her execution. It's like a very strange advent calendar that tends to go on every year, where we get the day by day of what's going on for Anne Boleyn. I've started calling it the Anvent calendar among my friends, but I've told you now, so there we go. So it's thought a computer science team believes they have used a facial recognition software to look at these, and they think they have found that this one is Anne Boleyn. This is led by the University of Bradford, and they call the discovery exciting. And they believe that the methodology could be used to replicate the behaviour for more art detective work. However, the art history community is skeptical, to say the least. So Dr. Charlotte Boland, who is a senior curator for 16th century collections at the National Portrait Gallery that is not involved in this study, says, quote, "We don't have a lifetime painted portrait of her that's absolutely secure. A wonderful painting that we can use as a reference point. Her reign wasn't necessarily long enough for an established iconography, and there is a tantalizing suggestion that some of her images might have been deliberately destroyed. So no known surviving paintings in her lifetime, a handful, though, of lifelike yet contested depictions left. Brian asks, isn't this normally attributed to being Amelia of Cleves, sister of Anne of Cleves? It has been previously, yes. There are a handful of lifelike yet contested depictions left, including a preparatory sketch with her name on it. That's the one with the goiter under the chin. However, those names are not put on by Holbein; they're later additions. This is the portrait drawings made by Hans Holbein the Younger. Many art historians do say that the one that's labelled as Anne Boleyn is in fact her, that it's a contemporary likeness of her. There's a counter argument that it was in fact mislabeled. There are opposing theories, but it's widely believed, based on written evidence, that the collection of Holbein drawings does indeed contain a portrait of Anne Boleyn somewhere. Enter facial recognition. Can it resolve the debates, pull out the true image for the collection with no human bias, and by ignoring labels? I don't know about AI not having human bias. Who trains it? Who trains the AI? Who programs it? Come on. No, I'm not having that. So the professor of visual computing at the University of Bradford said, what we're looking at is a bunch of drawings, then we're comparing these drawings through a machine-learned algorithm. A computer system took all the digital copies of the drawings in Holbein's collection and compared each one to the next in turn, looking for and comparing facial features to see if it could flesh out the correct sketch of the doomed Tudor Queen. The Royal Collection Trust, who hold the collection, were not involved with and does not endorse the findings, but does work on some of its artworks. Okay. So Karen Davis, independent historian and lead author of the research, says, quote, the result has shocked us completely. That's because based on their interpretation of the computer system's analysis, they believe they found the sketch of Anne Boleyn that's been hiding as an unidentified woman for hundreds of years. Bender Grosvenor thinks the research is, though, quote, a load of rubbish, and says it's suspicious that 500 years of art history is being questioned by what he calls a, quote, flawed methodology. The professor from Bradford says, I don't get worked up about it. The results are results, isn't it? Look, I don't know enough about facial recognition to know what this is, but equally, these are drawings, right? They're not. These are drawings rather than images, photographs, videos, real faces. Brian points out the skeptics will have a case when a portrait doesn't have a bee necklace. I mean, look, the bee necklace. There are some people who, I mean, I have a question about that, the displaying of the bee necklace, that famous bee necklace. We don't have it listed. We know that Anne Boleyn has some kind of like necklaces with lettering on them, but there's a question as to whether the bee necklace is actually hers. There are some people that suggest that actually the bee necklace really belonged to Mary Tudor, Henry's sister, and that it's a reference to her being the wife of Charles Brandon. I don't know. I don't know whether this is Anne Boleyn or not. I don't know whether... Oh, that's dropped on the floor. I don't know whether or not a computer program using facial recognition is reliable when used on a painting. I don't know if it is able to be replicated in that way. What I will say is that this sort of challenging gaze that we're seeing here in this image And also the quite unusual, I'm not quite sure what that headwear is supposed to be, but it's quite unusual, and it doesn't seem to me to be traditionally English. When I look at this painting, this drawing rather, the first thing that comes to mind, Amelia of Cleves makes some sense to me, because this to me looks like a preparatory sketch that's being produced for that Holbein does for the women who may be candidates to be Henry's wife. I think it dates from that time. I think it's around the time that it connects to Anne of Cleves, Amelia of Cleves, maybe Christina of Denmark, etc., etc., etc. I think that kind of challenging stare, that offer, if you will, where you sort of see her full face looking directly at you, it reminds me of those kinds of paintings. The gaze reminds me of Christina of Denmark. The face on posture reminds me of Anne of Cleves. You know, Jane Seymour is painted as Queen, is painted off with her chin off to one side. She's demure, she's a wife, she's the Queen of England. I don't know. I'm very interested to I'm very interested to learn more about the research, but eat her back. I heard another Tudor historian say that her headdress is a flat cap with the brim folded over around a coif. I find it difficult to see. I mean, so do I. I can see the coif, obviously, but that's not how those bonnets are drawn in this time. And like we only have to look at there's a bust portrait of Kathryn Parr where it's very clear that it's a bonnet. They're drawing them all the time. Men wear them. They're unisex by this point. I don't know. Brian says maybe one of the researchers would agree to chat on one of the channels. I mean, possibly. I think that the issue is I'd be very happy to talk to them. But I don't know enough about AI to know. I mean, I'm sure they understand it where they could talk to me about it and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds very viable. But then somebody who knows more about AI would be like, yeah, but you've not thought about this thing, that, the other thing. So I would sort of need to talk about people who were like very skeptical about it and very positive about it, because I don't know enough about this. I don't think, in my heart of hearts, I don't think that Henry VIII allowed any image or anything connected to Anne Boleyn to survive. Certainly not willingly. These collection of works are in the royal collection. They're not just floating around. I don't. There would have been a portrait sketch of Anne Boleyn made by Holbein. I don't think it survives long after she is killed, like her portrait. That's my personal opinion. Miss Amy, with no image of Anne, what reference is the AM modelling from? I believe they're looking at images of her daughter Elizabeth, and they're connecting it to that. And also they've got the coin. There is the coin from her time as well. But yeah, I think that's a preparatory work for marriage, for a precursor to a marriage negotiation. That's what I see when I see it. I don't think this is something that's being painted of somebody who is already Queen of England or the soon to be wife of the king. I think oh yeah, Brian points out they're also using Howard Cousins by Holbein as well. I think we want it to be Anne because she looks dark. The hair looks dark, the eyes look dark, so that's very much fits in with who we think we think she looked like. But also I think there's something in that unflinching stare, that speaks to us as who we want Anne Boleyn to be. This is, of all of the sketches, I said it at the time when I made my video on these sketches, this is the one that feels the most modern. It feels the most contemporary. It feels like she could step directly out of that image and come and have a cup of coffee with you. Do you know what I mean? And so for all of those reasons, we want this to be Anne. That doesn't make it Anne, though. Brian also asks, where am I on the Kathryn? I mean, she spells it with a CK? Oh, I can't remember. The one that's by Holbein is actually Anna Cleves. Possible. Possible. I like the Susan Doran argument. I believe it's Susan Doran that's the one that whenever I show Kathryn Howard, I always show the same one that I believe Susan Doran believes to be Kathryn Howard. I think it makes sense that Anne of Cleves is having pictures of her commissioned, or pictures of her are being commissioned. Even after her marriage, she is an incredibly wealthy, noble woman who is being treated as the king's sister. The creation, particularly of miniatures to send to her friends, to send to her supporters, these are political propaganda tools. I think it's highly likely that someone in Anne of Cleves' position is going to be producing something that could be made into miniatures that could be shared out, I think. I don't know. Well, I think here's the thing. I think we'll never know either. I think we'll never know. So this painting went from Hitler's Munich apartment to an American journalist's home to the National Gallery in London. An overlooked photograph from an old German auction book has shed a new light on the mysterious history of a painting at London's National Gallery. Discovered in a furniture catalogue from 1978, there's a grainy black and white image captured sometime in the early 1940s, and it appears innocuous at first. The artwork, Cupid Complaining to Venus, an early 16th century masterpiece by Lucas Cranach the Elder. But this is not just any Munich apartment. This is Adolf Hitler's home, paid for with help from the publishers of his manifesto Mein Kampf. The painting's appearance in the 1978 catalogue was overlooked until recently. But now it's the strangest link between the German dictator and this painting. How Hitler acquired the artwork and what happened to it between the fall of Nazi Germany and the 1963 acquisition by the National Gallery is, though, still being unraveled. The gallery spokesperson is asking that they're saying that they welcome any further information relating to the painting as part of an ongoing and long-standing set of research they're doing. The painting sold at auction in Berlin in 1909, but little else has been confirmed about its history and what its path was to getting to Hitler. It seems that he acquired it in 1935, perhaps part of a forced sale, or through an outright seizure from a Jewish collector. In the later 1930s, a British journalist, George Ward Price, who visited Hitler's home, noted that he had, quote, recently acquired a Cranach and 2 Bruegels for his Munich flat. Several years ago, Schwartz found an album of photos in Hitler's art collection, which included Cupid Complaining to Venus. How it got to London, another strange story. 1945, end of World War II, American reporter Patricia Lockridge was named mayor for a day at Berchtesgaden, near the border with Austria. Quote, how would you meet the problems of a wrecked German town? I tried it for a day. She wrote of the experience for Women's Home Companion. In the nearby village of Unterstein, where Hitler stored more than 1,000 stolen artworks, perhaps one day intended to fill a new museum of his own creation, Lockridge wrote, as governor, I found I was also responsible for the safety of Goering's $100 million worth of stolen art. This duty was rewarded apparently with a souvenir. My mother was told she could go into the warehouse and pick out whichever piece she wanted. She then smuggled the painting into the United States. Eventually, a gallery in New York acquired it, who then sold it to the National Gallery in London, but apparently fudged its provenance. So, we will see. I think this story's just begun. There will no doubt be updates for me to share with you. Next up, we have got something that's shiny in a different way. Look at this, will you? This gown, a violet satin dress, is recorded in the inventory of Hardwick in 1601. This is a gown that was worn by Bess of Hardwick. Look at it. That's not a replica. That's the real deal. There's going to be an exhibition called Bess's Dream, and it's running until the 30th of October. It's set in Bess's bedchamber, and the violet satin dress is going to be on display. It's just extraordinary that this has survived, and the condition, the colour, the fact that this textile hasn't been recut, the fact that it hasn't been repurposed, the fact that it's been allowed to survive is incredible in itself. The fact that the colour looks as pristine as it does, that it's a whole garment. Brian Valco asked, why does Beth of Hardwick not have a last name? Well, that is because she married a few times, and she does have last names. For example, she's Bess Shrewsbury because her husband was Shrewsbury, and he also has surnames. Her other husband has surnames, but she's Hardwick, Bess of Hardwick, because she builds the hall. Just look at it. And so in February 2023, what you're seeing there is the projections of Bess that were put onto Hardwick Hall. Oh my gosh. There's also going to be an animated short film inspired by the letters Bess wrote and received over the years, aiming to offer more insight into her life. This gown came back to Hardwick after being conserved at the National Trust Conservation Studio on the Blickling estate in Norfolk. Blickling, of course, collects to Anne Boleyn. We are told, quote, that this gown survived thanks to Evelyn, the last Duchess to live at Hardwick, who recognised its significance and took steps to store it away and preserve it. Without her intervention, this piece of history may have been lost forever. The gown connects us directly to Bess of Hardwick's world and invites us to consider the real Bess. She's often portrayed as a formidable and ambitious woman. This exhibition reveals far more about the real Bess. It highlights her role as a mother who placed great importance on her family in her life. Incredible. So cool. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. A 17th century supercomputer has sold for a record amount in an auction. This is an astrolabe, a brass astrolabe. It dates the 17th century, once part of the royal collection of Jaipur city in Western India. It has been sold for more than £2 million. That's $2.75 million at auction in London. This has set a record for the auction of an astronomical instrument from the Islamic world, according to a representative from Sotheby's. This is apparently one of the largest in existence. These are astrolabes and metal discs, multi-layered, interlocking components that historically were used to tell the time, map the stars, and show the direction of Mecca and the motion of the sky. They're basically a two-dimensional projection of a three-dimensional universe. The Dr. Federico Gigante, who's from the Oxford Centre for the History of Science, Medicine and Technology, says they are essentially a two-dimensional projection of a three-dimensional universe. I compare them
to modern-day smartphones because you can do so many things with them. Time of sunset, sunrise, height of a building, depth of wall, distance, even using them to predict the future. If they could be used alongside an almanac. You once used to cast horoscopes. This one we see here was commissioned by Akka Afzal, a nobleman who administered Lahore during this period. The object's massive size reflects the patron's stature. It weighs 8.2 kilograms. It is nearly 30 centimeters in diameter and stands about 46 centimeters tall, almost 4 times the size of a typical astrolabe from 17th century India. Sotheby's has said before the auction that the piece's pristine condition and royal provenance was expected to attract keen interest from museums and collectors. This broke the record held by an Ottoman astrolabe that was made for Sultan Bayezid III, which was a much smaller piece. It sold in 2014 for just under £1 million. So cool. This piece apparently contains 94 cities inscribed within it, each marked with their respective longitudes and latitudes, with 38 star pointers linked by an intricate floral tracery. There are 5 precision calibrated plates and degree divisions so fine they are subdivided down to 1/3 of a degree. Good Lord. And this is being done in the 17th century. Wow. So cool. I don't know who's bought this. Scarlett says, please let it go to a museum. Yeah, I can't see who's bought it. If I find out, I will update if we find out where it's going. Next up, this painting. This is 1748, Joshua Reynolds' portrait and the enslaved boy that features in it. The story of this enslaved boy has now come out. He was known for hundreds of years simply as Jersey, an enslaved boy of about 11 years old, rendered on canvas by Sir Joshua Reynolds. But now, the life of this individual, believed to be Reynolds' earliest depiction of a person of colour, has begun to emerge. This was thought to have been completed in 1748, shows the boy and his, quote, master. This is the naval officer and member of parliament, Paul Henry Urey. The child is looking up at him, as we can see. It once hung in the Saltram, which is now a National Trust mansion in Plympton, Devon. The painting was considered an early Reynolds masterpiece. But research is now being done to figure out who Jersey was. So they looked through Admiralty records, letters, muster books, captain's logs, and the curators at the Royal Museums Greenwich found him named as Boston, Jersey, on one of the ships that Urey was connected to. They believe he might have been given the surname Jersey because Urey was born in the Channel Islands. It's possible he had his first name because he'd once lived in Boston, Massachusetts. The research discovered that Jersey was baptized as George Walker, possibly a name he had been known by earlier in his life, on the 30th of July, 1752, probably in a chapel in Westminster. The baptismal certificate describes, quote, a certain black boy called Boston, Jersey, baptized by the name of George Walker, age 15, which means he would have been around about 11 when painted by Reynolds. In a muster of 1751, he was described as being a member of the crew rather than Urey's servant. Quote, later his name appears as one of 10 crew members due for discharge per paybook. This could imply that Jersey was in receipt of Royal Navy pay, but also that any possible sums owing went to Urey. It's unclear. He was then discharged from a ship in summer of 1753, and then he vanishes from the records. David Olasoga, who is a historian, broadcaster, and National Trust ambassador, said that this research has helped to bring Boston, Jersey out of the shadows. Quote, The project asks us to look more closely at a familiar past, revealing a lifelong obscured and reminding us that history is shaped as much by those rendered invisible as those remembered. To tell Jersey's story is to confront the silences within our own history, to recognise that individuals whose lives have been too often hidden from view. We can now see Jersey more clearly. We know more about his life, his naval career, but also how he was portrayed on canvas. And in time, more might be discovered. Boston Jersey is now at least being given recognition as a person and is more than just a trope. This painting is going to be on show, and it is currently on show in Saltram's Saloon. More of this sort of research, please. How interesting is that? To go and find him in the muster books. A new crannog has been unveiled 5 years after a blaze. This is an Iron Age crannog. Has been unveiled after a fire destroyed the previous incarnation. The Scottish Crannog Centre on the banks of Loch Tame burned down in June 2021. Work began to rebuild it in May 2023. With work on the £700,000 crannog, which is a type of ancient artificial island, beginning the following October. The recreated Iron Age roundhouse was destroyed in just 6 minutes in the 2021 blaze. The rebuilt £5 million Crannog Centre, minus its centrepiece, reopened in April 2024 on a new site, 12 times bigger than its predecessor. The new crannog has been built by a team of specialist craftspeople and apprentices, 8 of them working in 2 teams at one time. They use traditional skills, including roundwood timber farming and thatching, to complete the structure. This crannog was reportedly, quote, very much in keeping with a dwelling place inhabited by prehistoric ancestors, using the materials they would have used. It does look really cool as well. This roundhouse is the part of the structure where people lived. It's about 8 meters or 26 feet high and is reached by a 50-meter or 160-foot bridge. Quote, aside from the crannog itself, they've got a number of thatched buildings in which our team demonstrates traditional skills such as weaving, blacksmithery, woodworking to our visitors, keeping these crafts alive and introducing them to new generations. That is so cool. If anybody gets a chance to go and see this, let us know. I think I want to go and see this. That's so cool. Brian, have I visited Ireland? I've been to Dublin. I went on a tour looking at, and we talked about the Easter Rising, so a more recent history is what I looked into there. Ireland, and I've also been to Belfast as well, and we went to the dockyards at Belfast, so much more kind of contemporary history to me, but very cool. I want to go back. And an epic Neolithic hall has been unveiled at Stonehenge. This is a replica of a 4,500-year-old Neolithic building. This is a £1 million Kusama Neolithic hall, constructed using historically authentic methods and locally sourced material by 100 volunteers. It's based on archaeological evidence from nearby prehistoric settlement at Durrington Walls, and it's going to open to visitors in the summer before converting into a learning space in September. How that's so cool. I love it. So they know what the trees were like. They had oak, Scots pine, ash, hazel all growing there. And they use those kind of original techniques. Oh, Lost in Space 175. I saw a time lapse of this. So cool. That is so cool. During visits, students are going to give the opportunity to handle replica tools, try out Neolithic crafts, and discover what everyday life was like 4,000 years ago. This is a £1 million project that's part of a wider education initiative that is going to include a currently under construction learning centre. This is so cool. I love this. So cool. Brian says, I had a great aunt who had a hat just like the roof. I want one. I want a hat like that roof. I think it would be very chic. I'd feel very fine with a hat like that. We're moving on to the ding dong portion now, pals. And the first ding dong also is not just someone being a ding dong, it also involves a ding dong. Let's go. Let's jump right in. This genius has damaged a Florentine fountain. A 28-year-old woman climbed a statue of Neptune to touch his genitals as a dare. This is a pre-wedding prank. She has caused thousands of euros worth of damage to the Neptune fountain in the Piazza di Signora. This statue was commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici, in 1559 to celebrate the marriage of his son, Francesco I, to the Grand Duchess Joanna of Austria. The basin encloses horses that pull a shell-shaped chariot at the base of the statue depicting Neptune, the Roman god of the sea. A 28-year-old tourist, whose nationality has not been disclosed, was spotted by police and quickly removed from the monument. She told them her friends had dared her to touch Neptune's genitals, according to a statement from Florence's city council. It was then inspected, and there is minor but significant damage to both legs of the horses that she had walked on and the frieze that she held on to avoid slipping. The cost is estimated to come to €5,000 or £4,340. She's been charged with defacing an artistic and architectural asset. Well done. Not the first time a tourist has tried to mount Neptune. That is an inappropriate choice of words that I really enjoy, but very, very naughty nonetheless. So this sort of stuff has happened before, but we should know better. If you're big and bold enough to be part of a wedding party, maybe you're the bride. Well done, starting married life with that debt. Brilliant work, spectacular. If we're daring our friends to do nonsense like this, I hope she either never talks to you again. Also, why are you doing dares? Stop it. Ridiculous behavior. And what an amount of damage to have done. Foolishness. Anyway, there's more ding-dongery. This one here. A fraudster tried to sell bogus ancient statues to Sotheby's, but was foiled when his fake accompanying paperwork was found to be written with printing methods that were 25 years too modern. If you're gonna forge, you've got to forge all of it. Good Lord. Andrew Crowley, who at 46 is old enough to know better, frankly, came from Longwell Green, Bristol. He asked the auction house to value 3 Cycladic figures and an Anatolian stargazer statuette that he claimed he'd inherited from his grandfather. He presented fake invoices purportedly written in 1976, but forensics found they were made using printing methods invented in 2001. Venomous Care Bear. Words to live by. Don't take the dare if you don't have the bail. Words to live by. I mean, I would say I'd go one step further. This is very much a don't lick the archaeology. Don't do the dare. Don't dare your mates. So if these had been real, they would have been worth around £680,000. But this was hypothetical. So the judge reduced the value, so it's still fairly high, £340,000. The accompanying paperwork had been typed using a typewriter on paper embossed with an antique dealer's logo and even a 9p stamp. This is a crude attempt because Sotheby's spotted this document as bogus fairly early on. They also spotted numerous spelling mistakes. The statues were about 30 centimeters tall and weighed about 1 kilogram. the legitimate Cycladics were made on islands of Greece, dating to about 3,000 years ago. So he was ordered to complete 200 hours of unpaid work, so community service, and was ordered to pay £1,630 in court costs. And also, everyone knows that he's a numpty. So there we go. Or as Miss Amy calls it, a dead set drongo. Yeah, dead set drongo. In London, tis the polite term is numpty. There are a few more that involve expletives. Put this in ding dong. This is very illegal. Northern Colorado, people have stolen a bronze statue. This is the Perfect Catch statue from Glenmere Park in Greeley. They've chopped it off at the ankles. So the statue was stolen at around about 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So you can see they've cut the statue off at the feet to remove it from the base. And they're asking for anybody who was in the area so this is Tuesday before May 14th. So this is the 8th of May. This is Tuesday, 8th of May, I believe. I'm very bad at maths. They're asking for people who might have security systems, dash cams, anything that might have spotted a white truck or suspicious activity between 2 and 3 p.m. They're asking scrapyards to keep a sharp eye for a material that might have been part of a statue. So if you are in the area, if you did see anybody with heavy equipment loading a large object into the park, they have got a number for you to call. Greeley Police Department's non-emergency London number, that is 970. I'm going to say that again. Greeley Police Department's non-emergency number is 970-350-9605. So if you might know something, if you might have some details, please check it out. Venomous Care Bear, that's melted by now. I fear it probably is. This looks like they knew where to take it. I agree. But if somebody might have an idea of who's responsible, then dob them in. One more ding dong. There's a video of this one rather than a whole article. Oh, Snudpuckle does point out that Greeley is a college town. So who knows? Maybe it's in a frat house or a sorority. Do they do things like that? Could this be so? End of term dare? Is it end of term there? Either way, dob them in. The Colorado Crafter, is bronze worth a lot of money? Yeah. Bronze and copper. Wires get ripped out all the time. Anything that's meltdownable is that money to be. It's money. And if you've nicked it as well, it's money for nothing, isn't it? So this is a video that you can go and watch. The moment that somebody 30-year-old from New Zealand dives into the Trevi Fountain. You can't do that. Also, I think it is wild work to jump into really old public water that you don't know is safe to swim in. Are people aware? This is also going to be a no eating section of the amoebae. Is that how you pluralize that? We're going to go with it. The amoebae, etc., and bacteria that can live in water that can get directly into your eyeballs. Like, they can go into your eyeballs. Why are we jumping into fountains? What are we doing? No. That is how you get eye worms. Absolutely not. Prion diseases. I think if you're going to get an acquired prion disease, you sort of have to eat brain matter. But let's say it. Don't jump into the Trevi Fountain. You might get an acquired prion disease. Steve, this is an A&E choice. This is an A&E choice. I'm not a fan of this behavior. Just it's so gross. You're fully dressed as well. You're gonna go back to your hotel room dripping. I mean, it's not that they don't chlorinate it, do they? They don't chlorinate it. Stop it. None of you have done this, but still, tell everybody you know to stop jumping into unidentified, unapproved bodies of water. If you're not told you can swim in it, especially like, I mean, it's basically still water. Sure, it's flowing through a fountain, but good God, don't go into still water. Absolutely not. Unless you're told you can swim in it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Anyway, let's move on to events and exhibitions. And I've told you not to get eyeworms. Don't get eyeworms, friends. No one needs eyeworms. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a thing you can get. You can get it in water that's basically not chlorinated or purified enough. I think maybe you need a contact lens or something. Either way, you have to go to in London. You have to go to Moorfields to deal with that. You've got to go to Moorfields a lot, and it hurts. And there's medications, and your eyeball gets people fiddling. No one wants their eyeballs fiddled with on a regular basis. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Ear back. It's not dysentery or cholera. It's got a much longer, grosser, wormier name than that. No, I don't like it. Anyway, events and exhibitions. Edinburgh, they have got a gorgeous golden coronation gown on display in this exhibition. The Edwardians' Age of Elegance. This opened on the 22nd of May, and it's running. Sorry, they had an event on the 22nd of May. There are more events going on. They open on the 24th of April, and they are going through to the 6th of December, 2026. Oh, that is what it is called. That is what it is called. Thank you. See what I mean? It has a much wormier name. That's what it is. Thank you. It's an invisible eye worm. Oh, no. Here we go. And there are also brain-eating amoebas. Look, you don't want amoebas in your eyes, ears, or up your bum. Stop it. No one needs this. Oh, gross. But golden gowns in events. Here we go. So this is the King's Gallery at the Palace of Holyrood House. Check on. So this is open daily, but just make sure there's not something going on. So that you just, in case they're using Holyrood House or something, just make sure if you are going to make a trip up there, make sure it's open. I recommend pre-booking in advance. But yes, a lovely golden gown. Spectacular. And all the way the other side of the world, Sydney, Australia, they have got the treasures of the Viking Age. They have got the Galloway Hoard on display. This is very exciting. So this is opening on the 28th of May. So I can't do time zones. That's either in 2 days or 4. Soon. It's opening soon. You know when the 28th of May is for you then. And it's staying open until the 11th of October, 2026. And this was found in 2014. And in this hoard, 5 kilograms of silver, gold, and other materials. Gorgeous stuff. If you get a chance to see it, let me know what you think of it. Delightful. And now, friends, our last slide. Also, unashamed, shameless plug for me and my pals, because We are in London. It's happening. Scroll down. Oh, you rickrolled me. No, Rickrolling. No, don't want to rickroll. So we're doing this. We are at the Other Palace Theatre, which is, I think the nearest tube is Victoria, but check that. I come in at Victoria. And we are there from the 23rd of June to the 28th of June. We're doing all evening performances, but also a couple of matinees and early evenings. It's me and my pals. We did Brighton. It was very fun. And we are going to be doing it some more. So if you want to see what it would be like if a therapist, played by myself, was putting these bunch of monarchs into group therapy, then this is the way to do it. Brian asked, have I ever played Queen Victoria? No, I haven't, but she is somebody that I'd like to have a go of, particularly, you know, Queen Victoria, once she's had the kids, like angry. I would like to play Queen Victoria on the precipice of her losing Albert, which might sound weird because I think that before he died, she hated that man. And I think they had an awful marriage. And I think you could have some fun with the fact that she just loathed being pregnant and she thinks most of her kids are annoying. And she's just besotted by her husband, but she also hates him. So I think she'd be fun to play at that age. I think she'd be fun. But in this one, I'm a therapist and going around my shoulder. So we've got Charles II, we've got Marie Antoinette, we have got Henry VIII, Mansa Musa, and we've also got Sophia Dalip Singh. So that's who we've got. So yeah, Lizzie, you just got that one out. Yes, so Charles II, Marie Antoinette, Henry VIII, Mansa Musa, and Sophia Dalip Singh. And it's a good time. And I love being part of this company. They are wonderful. Scarlett, how could she be besotted and hate him at the same time? Okay, maybe besotted is the PC word. I think she was very sexually interested in being with him, but they also used to have the most horrendous rows. Horrendous. It was Victoria, to me, strikes me as a person who likes you better when you're dead. She likes you better when you're dead. She likes to mourn you. The way she would go on about her poor deceased papa, who she never remembered, but she really liked thinking about him. She strikes as a person that loves to mourn you. Colorado Crafter asks, is it true she had bipolar disorder? It's very difficult to retrospectively diagnose a person. I don't think so. I think she had a very disordered upbringing with the Kensington House system. And I think she was, on top of that, quite spoiled and entitled. I think she was prone to rages. I think she probably ended up having, at least with some of her pregnancies, maybe all of them, postnatal depression. And I think she was married to a man. She was somebody who really liked parties and things like that. The whole thing about we're not amused, that's not what her diaries say. So talk about how amused she was all the time. Frequently talk about how amused she was. But I think apart from a pronounced sexual attraction, I don't really know how much she and Albert had in common. I think they saw the world quite differently. And I think, and we know they had absolutely apocalyptic rows. Like he'd lock himself away. He'd like push little notes under the door being like, please be nice to me. Please stop screaming at me. So yeah, it was I just don't think it was a very good marriage. Lizzie B asked maybe for part 2, Kathryn the Great, Cleopatra, Alexander the Great. Goodness me. That would be spicy. That would be spicy. It's a good time. Shane, Queen Victoria having the bust of Albert in her children's wedding photos. Yeah. And like having a cast of his hand and also having like all of his every morning his clothes and shaving equipment and all that stuff was still laid out like he was alive. Yeah, Scarlett, she did mourn him forever. She mourned him forever, but she also used him as a stick to beat the living with. She mourned him forever, but she also used him as a stick to beat the living with, to, you know, tell her son that it was his fault his father was dead, you know, that nobody could ever live up to darling Albert. He was just the best man that ever lived. He was the most wonderful husband. And also the sort of protracted mourning allowed her to do whatever she blimmin' well wanted. I think she just, I mean, I also think it's entirely possible that she did contract a morganatic marriage with John Brown. I don't think I buy her having another child by him, but I do think she possibly did contract a morganatic marriage with him. I think she had the capacity to be a very passionate, but also a very cruel woman. So, thank you, friends. That is what I have for you today. And thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for chatting. It's been a really cool chat. We are almost at 3 hours, so it's time to wrap things up. So I look forward to speaking to you in the next History News. We're going to be doing this again. End of June is the next month. That's how the year works. Wow. Okay. So I will be, it will be the day before I go into doing the show, I think. No, it'll be the day after I've finished the run of the shows, I believe. So I'll tell you how it's all gone. Maybe I will see some of you at the show if you can come to London and join in. Just as a forewarning, I am not being myself. I am Dr. Thompson. So if you should see me on stage, then I will be being Dr. Thompson. But if you can stick around, it'd be lovely to say hello and to have a little chat if you can. So if not, I will chat to you in the next History News Live. We'll also, of course, have our premiere videos to talk about, as usual, on Fridays at 4 p.m. Thank you, Lizzie, very much for the super chat. And I will certainly be planning something fun to do with the Kiddlywinks. I think there are some cool things happening around, so I will take them to do some fun museum stuff, maybe. So thank you again, everybody. And wherever you are in your week, I hope you're going to have a wonderful rest of it. And if you're hot in the UK, try and stay as cool as possible. Fingers crossed it doesn't get too much hotter. I think it might, but it will break soon enough. And it will no doubt be raining this time next week. So in the meantime, please do press all the buttons, interrupt this video in various ways. It does help to share the content out, and potentially as well, the more you interact with it, YouTube might tell you when I'm doing stuff. If you show them that you're watching me, maybe they'll be like, by the way, here's a notification. Who can tell? It might happen. In the meantime, please do take care of yourselves, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all next time. But for now, I'm going to get ready for bed because I'm going down to Dorset tomorrow. So take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.